abuse, well, it's just as bad across the genders. 21% of girls, 10% of boys, 11% of boys say that they've been abused sexually in one way or the other. They say knowledge is power. So how do we empower our children, our young men and women, who are our future leaders and our greatest resource, right where it belongs, in the family? If you have a question, if you have a suggestion, if you have an experience you would like to share, remember those statistics are staggering, especially for women. 1 out of 2. I wonder if my guest would tell me something about that. Natalie, good morning and welcome to Sunrise. How are you?
Thank you very much. Fine, thank you.
This is a tough topic, isn't it?
It is.
It is something that for most people is deeply personal and that we often don't talk about. We don't talk about sex in general. It's like a taboo subject. And when it comes to sex in the context of it being abusive against one's will or premature, then that is something that families don't even want to discuss.
That's true.
Do you have any idea as to why?
Sorry. First of all, I believe that they feel embarrassed without thinking about the child's emotional state, because when you don't address the issue or talk about it with the child, then they're bottling up all the emotions inside them. But you need to have a chat with them, let them know that it's happened, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't put yourself in a situation where it's going to happen again. So if we do the initial talk with these children, then they understand that this is wrong and this is right. I met a 10-year-old girl whose brother started sleeping with her when she was 9 years old. And she didn't understand then what her brother was doing. And for her, my brother will not harm me, you know. And she has to move to live with a different family. And that's where she found out that what her brother was doing is wrong. You know, so if her mother had spoken to her about this at the age of 9 or 10 or even younger, because there's a 6-year-old girl that the driver who's been taking her to school has been abusing her. And if her mother had spoken to her, we think that they are young, they don't understand. But even at that tender age, you let them know if you're touched here is wrong, if you're touched here is wrong. Then they understand and protect themselves. Do not put themselves in that situation, you know. But we don't do it because we think that if we talk about it, they'll become bad.
Just hold your thought right there, Natalie. You said if we speak to young children as young as 5, 6 years old, and give them, the simple basics, the do's and the don'ts when it comes to sex, what it is, what it's not, what's acceptable, what is not, then they will not put themselves in that situation. But you just gave me an example about a girl being sexually abused by her brother at the age of 9, and a 6-year-old girl being sexually abused by a driver on the way to work. Now, surely these 6 and 9-year-olds did not put themselves in that situation.
Right.
It was their parents who put them in that situation.
True. They didn't put themselves in that situation, but if they had been spoken to about it, when the driver said, if you tell, you'll die, she would know that he's lying, he's protecting himself instead. If the 10-year-old girl's mother had spoken to her about this, as soon as the brother started doing this to her, she would definitely raise the alarm. But she didn't know about it, and she didn't know what was going on was wrong until she had to go and live with a different family, and then something comes up and they start talking about it, and she realizes that no, what my brother has been doing was wrong. So no matter how old they are, we need to start communicating with them. Whatever age, you take it as simple as they will understand it, up to the point where they understand it at a more advanced level.
Now, you chose primary 4 right through to senior high school, right through junior high to senior high as the age bracket for your initial program. Why?
Well, primary 4 to GSS 3 are the adolescent, main beginning adolescent. So they are a very key target. For the younger ones, because of the community we live in, we need to get parents' approval. Even with the class 4 to GSS 3, we send permission slips to the parents. But we haven't had any parents approve yet that, yes, you can talk to my younger child in kindergarten or in class 1 or class 2.
Wait, just repeat that one more time. I want it to sink in.
Okay.
This thing about parents not giving their explicit permission to a team from the Ghana Health Service, the Wish Foundation, on this adolescent sex education project. Parents are not saying yes. Are they saying no?
They're saying no. Some of them are saying no because they think that if you talk to them about sex education, then they become bad children.
Okay, how does that work? Tell me the rhetoric. What's in the mind of our parents, those who think that way? Why do they think that?
They think that if the child, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. and their children. But when you sit in one of the programs we do and you ask the child to define sex, the definition they give is very intense. So they know and they understand, because they're telling me that we are learning from the media, we are learning from friends.
Okay, share with me these definitions at the earliest stage that you've just had experience with. You've been doing this for 8 months, since November last year. You ended in the mid-July, so that's about 8 months of intensive interaction. Tell me what the primary four answers have been by and large. What do girls in primary 4, class 4, know about sex?
Well, they tell me that sex is an act between a man and a woman, and there's a lot of friction and there's discharge, and it must be done behind closed doors. Now, this is a 10-year-old's definition of
sex. These are 10-year-olds' definition of sex.
10-year-old. So if that 10-year-old girl gives me this definition, and when we do the event, we fill a feedback form from the girls to understand what they've learned. Have they had this education before? Would you like your parent to continue this at home for you? And if yes, which topic? So it gives us some information as to where they're getting all of this knowledge from, and it's not from home.
How do you reconcile this against the background of the statistic that 1 out of 2 women report that their first intimate encounter was against their will?
Oh, it's very true. Because, I've met 10,062 girls. Out of the 10,062, at least about 5,050 of them have been raped more than once, have been abused by somebody who's close to them. So if 10,062 and you have 5,050, then that is only what we know.
Okay, is this a problem that we, our age group, as possible parents, thinks is prevalent amongst our children, or is it something that you think was prevalent in our generation or that of our parents?
I think that it's something that was prevalent in our generation.
What about that of our parents?
Our parents may have grown up not having to go through this talk, and then it didn't really matter.
I'm talking about the abuse.
Oh, the abuse has always been there.
It has always been there.
We just don't talk about it. It's the society we live in. I met a girl, she's 10 years old. She said to me a week before we went to her school, a man in her compound sent her to buy gari. She came back with the gari and the man says, take it to my room. She goes into the room, he follows her, rapes her. And I asked her, have you told your mom? She says, no. Why? Because I'm afraid she'll beat me or say I'm a bad girl.
Okay, I started off this morning's edition of Sunrise episode with a quote from Albert Einstein, which says basically that if you can't explain it simply, if you can't explain something simply, you don't understand it well enough. This is a man who broke the theory of relativity down to E is equal to mc squared. Now, how simple is that? You could see, like, blackboards of calculations, and he just, made it so simple. Energy is mass times the speed of light squared. Simple. And that's the foundation of all our quantum physics.
Anatomy of the body.
What do you mean by that?
Instead of using the actual names of the organs we have, we tend to use nicknames.
Oh, like Billy Goat and sausage.
So if you have used a different nickname with your child,
Tata, all kinds of names,
and the person who's going to abuse her is using a different nickname, to her, she's reconciling it differently.
So use the accurate names.
Use the accurate names.
A penis is a penis.
A penis is a penis.
A vulva is a vulva.
A vulva is a vulva. Because when we start using nicknames, then the communication is you're embarrassed about what you have. But this is what you have. You can't change it.
So that's your first advice to parents. If you understand your body in simple terms, explain it in those same simple, accurate terms.
Exactly.
Okay, what's the second piece of advice?
We need to bridge the gap of communication.
Now, that's a difficult one.
It is, but that is the key thing, If we don't communicate with them, we do not create an opportunity for them to come back and communicate with us. I met a girl, she's doing national service now. She had simple candida, and she couldn't talk to her mom about it. She was afraid, so she wrote her mother a letter. And her mother saw the letter and she felt sad. If we go through the point of talking to them about adolescence or everything that's going to happen, the expectations, let them understand that the crush you have on that boy is natural, but what you do with it is the most important thing. You open the communication line with the child. Sometimes we think we know our children, we know that we have the best of kids. But one thing we don't realize is that when they leave home, they're with a different set of people. So we need to cover all the bases. We need to be confident about communicating with them. And that's the reason why we're doing this workshop for the parents. For some parents, they don't know where to start from. Some of them say we start and we freeze. So we're going to take you through how to communicate with them, no matter how old they are, at the simplest point, so that whatever it is, they can come to you and talk to you. Last night, one of the girls from the schools we've been to called me, and she says, oh, there's a boy in her area who is constantly trying to sleep with her. Have you told your mom? No. Can you please help me tell my mother? I met a young girl who, she was in tears. She says, I've been trying to get close to my mom to tell her certain things that are happening. But every time I try, she just yells at me and says, you're a bad girl. And she was in tears. So she's giving me her mom's number and said, please call my mom and talk to her for me.
Now, clearly, you can't call the moms and dads of all the reported cases. We have 21% of first sexual intercourse being rape in Ghana, and these are 2002 WHO statistics. So these are just the reported cases.
Yes.
They're not even the actual ones.
Yes.
These are just the ones that have managed to somehow come to the knowledge of authorities. 21%, 1 out of five. 1 out of 2 girls report that the first time they were sexually touched, it was also against their wish, by force. Do we have the resources to deliver this simple knowledge that you're sharing with me?
26 schools, and to get this running, it's been a miracle, I must say. We've had some support, yes, but it doesn't nearly cut it, you know. And the resources may be there, but as to whether it's taken to the right source, where you are actually going to get the work done, that's another thing to talk about on a different show.
Okay, how do you convince parents who have difficulties with the subject in generally, very possibly because they have either been through some form of abuse or because they are afraid of it in general terms? How do you convince them that teaching children about sex is not going to encourage them to experiment with early sex, premarital sex?
Well, first of all, for those who have been through it, they are living with a serious psychological problem. And if you think about it, that you want your child to go through that and the repercussions it has on the child in the future, your first inclination is, if I can't get over my problem, let me not put my child in that situation.
Famanyami, that's what someone will tell you.
Well, Famanyami doesn't work anymore when it's psychological in the child's mind, because it has serious repercussions. You may find a young girl who is struggling in a relationship today, and she's old enough to be married, and it's not because there's no man out there for her, but every time she gets close to a man, she remembers what was done to her many years ago, and it makes her cringe, you know, and she just withdraws back into her shell. So if we don't communicate, look, when a woman is pregnant, right, she sits in a very comfortable position for the pregnancy to be comfortable. I mean, we bond with the pregnancy. We go to the extent of singing to the pregnancy. I mean, you can imagine some of the croaky voices these unborn babies have had to live up with. And when the child is born and it gets to the age where the bond is needed, it's gone. So why do we bond when they are not born, and when they are grown up and they need that bonding, we don't have it anymore? We need to go back, you know, and look at what you want for your child. What do you expect that your girl child should go through that will not harm her in the future? You know, it's about some of us parents really don't know, because we didn't get that talk, you know. But for those of us who know, we need to go on and not assume that, oh, my child is a perfect child. There's nothing like a perfect parent.
Well, talking about talking, how effective is talking when it comes to controlling body chemistry urges? I mean, like it or not, a child grows into an adolescent, you know, hits that period where their hormones are raging, comes across a man, you know, who might also have experiences and feelings, and unfortunately the inevitable happens. Why do you focus so much on girls? I don't see boys anywhere in here. Sex education for boys.
We have done some for the boys. We usually do a pilot first to understand what they're going through. So based on the pilots, then we take it off on a bit large scale. So we did the pilot for the boys early on in the year with Harvest Chapel. And the girls, we did the pilot in November, so we started officially in January. One thing, I get that question all the time: how do I stop that feeling I have for that boy? And basically, we need to let them understand that at your age, it's something that is there, but you need to focus on what is important in your life now. As difficult as it may be, you need to psych yourself. You need to let yourself understand. I tell them that, look, when you get pregnant, the boy is going to go to school. You're going to stay at home. You may not have the courage to go back to school. Apart from getting pregnant, there's so many things that can go wrong, you know. So you think about it and the dream you have. Who do you want to be in future? Do you think getting there, you can combine getting yourself involved with premarital sex or getting yourself involved in some boy now with doing that? And look at all the effort that your parents are putting in to put you where they want you to be or where you dream to be. So the focus should be on what you want for yourself in life. As young as they are, they have dreams. And when they talk about what they want to become, they give you an answer and their face is so lit up. So you tell them that, look, in that expression of joy when you talk about who you want to become, you consider that with everything else that you may go through when you put yourself in the other situation.
Who should start the conversation? And I'm talking about at the home level, in the home situation. Is it the parents, or do you try to encourage the child to tell you something in a roundabout manner? You talk about the birds and the bees. You said, no, speak plainly, speak bluntly, speak accurately.
The parents, because you need to have control of the conversation. Now, if you start showing to the child that, okay, I'm not sure you're stuttering, then the child is not going to have confidence in what you're saying.
If you look like you're embarrassed about it yourself.
Exactly. You know, we went to a school that when we started talking about sex education, there was a teacher there pregnant. She walked out. She walked out. I mean, if the teacher is walking out, how can she teach these kids? So the parent has to start it, and as early as possible.
And once you have this conversation with a girl or a boy at the age of 5 or 6, how do you continue it? How important is it to continue the dialogue? And what is the frequency? How often do you speak to a child about sexuality and sex education in general?
As often as possible. We advise that, I mean, every month, find a reason to bring the conversation up. You know, there are questions you can ask like, oh, so who are your friends in school? You ask, and you always find out, especially for the girl child or even the boy child, there's always one special girl in the group. I mean, when you think about it, if you remember when you were in kindergarten, amongst all your friends, there was always one girl you really liked.
Indeed. I think there were 2.
Well, when you went to class 1, it was the same thing.
But there was one particular one I did like in kindergarten.
So the crush thing starts really when they are young, but when they become adolescents, because of the hormonal changes, it becomes much stronger. You know,
it's true. When I went to primary school, I thought I was much more in love with a particular girl in our class.
And even that, I'm sure every term there was a different girl you had a crush on.
Not quite. I think I basically had one in kindergarten that I thought I was in love with, and one in primary school that I also thought I was in love with. I never told them though.
Yes. You know, one of the things we talk about is when you have a crush on a boy, should you tell him? Should you tell him, you know?
It's a good question. Should you?
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't, because at their age, you give him information that he uses against you. I mean, if you have a crush on this boy, you see him and you get all the butterflies in your stomach, and he comes to you one day and says, oh, I don't have money today, can you buy me lunch? You will gladly buy him lunch.
That's
and the
how
girl
it begins,
said, yes, they tell me. They say, yes, I'll do it, you know. If he comes to say, oh, will you come and visit me? You are so excited. You go to his house and he says, oh, I don't entertain visitors. My parents allow me to have visitors in my room. Come to my room. And then you get to the room and he says, will you kiss me? You say no, and you say, I thought you said you love me. You know, and he starts giving you that guilt trip and using the words. So you don't tell him. It's between you. I mean,
okay, what do you tell the boys? Here's a male viewer posting to us from the Oil City Takrady, I believe. He's a regular contributor to my dialogue with guests. Says, talking sex is embarrassing to me. And he thinks, and he adds, and even in general, in Africa. You're not talking about Takrady or Greater Accra, Western Region or Ghana. He says Africa as a whole. He says talking sex is embarrassing to me. This is a young man. And even in general in Africa. What would you say to that?
Well, if we keep saying it's embarrassing, we actually get into the act of sex. Don't you find that embarrassing? If that is not embarrassing for you, then you should be able to talk about it. The days where we think it's an embarrassing topic are long gone. Because even as adults, if we don't talk about it, we get ourselves into all sorts of trouble. Can you imagine for the young ones, where they have their innocence being abused and taken advantage of? We need to talk about it.
Okay, you've been talking to 10,062 girls
yes.
For a period of 8 months,
Yes.
Right through primary 4 to JHS 3.
Yes.
And you think that you've achieved successful communication. One of the biggest assumptions in communication is that it has transpired, that it has taken place. How do you measure your success?
I've had quite a number of the girls call me to say that this is happening to me, and I've told the boy this as I learned from the communication we've had, and he's reacted this way, but I really don't care, because I know that my focusing on my studies and what is right is what is going to lead me to this direction that I want to go in life. And they send us mails, they call, they send text messages. So, and a few parents too have called to say thank you, because before my daughter was a part of this program, she had this attitude. But since she's been through it and seen some of the harsh realities, her life is totally taking a different turn. These boys that are calling and she's saying, look, I'm studying, I don't want to know. We've had about 6-10 parents call to say thank you, and can you come and do this in our church? So we'd like to believe that it is...
Do this in a church. Okay, I like that you mentioned church. I'll come to that in a minute. Felix I says, I'm so passionate about this discussion. Natalie, may God seriously bless you. And the Wish Foundation. Senna would like to integrate this into the basic school project. This is a man who works with a group of volunteers.
Okay.
And I says would like to work with you. Are boys raped? Asks the young man who says that he thinks talking about sex is embarrassing. Clearly not on Facebook.
Clearly not on Facebook.
Clearly not on
Yes,
Facebook. Because he's been posting and posting and posting. So if you think that you have a problem communicating verbally with your parents, you said that many children write letters or notes. Is that a good way of communicating?
Well, when you think that you can't get to your mom and you want to talk to her, you need to initiate something. And if writing a letter is what does it for you, go for it.
Is that what you'd advise boys to do, to communicate? And would you say boys should approach their dads or approach their moms?
Both.
Both?
Because you see, from their mothers, they learn how to deal with girls. From their dads, they learn how to not be bad boys. For example, we tell them that when a woman says no, it's no. It is no. It's not maybe, or she's playing hard to get, or eventually she's going to come round. When she says no, it's no. One of the things we focus also with the boys is peer pressure. Both the boys and the girls go through the peer pressure thing. But with the boys, it tends to be a bit more stronger than the girls.
Are boys abused? Actually, the question that Boga Ali Hashim posed is, are boys raped?
Yes.
According to statistics, yes, 11%.
Well, not to the legal definition of what rape is, but yes, they get abused. So we would rather use the word abuse.
Okay. And you mentioned churches. Now, if you're talking to students in the range of primary 4 to JHS, well, your work is cut out for you. You go to their schools, even if the pregnant teacher walks out,
yes,
you still have the whole class or the whole assembly. It's not going to be so easy getting parents unless you go to the churches that they attend. Have you been given a big, broad welcome right across the denominations and the faith to come to churches, to come to mosques, talk about sex education?
We haven't had any invites from the mosques, but we have done some churches. And it's the church itself that says, look, we have a teen class, and we believe that this will be good for them. So we've done about 4
for
churches.
Parents?
No, for the children.
For the children. What about the parents?
For the parents, we haven't had an opportunity to do a talk with the parents. And because we knew that at the end of the season, we're going to do a general workshop for the parents on the parent-adolescent communication on sexuality. So we haven't done any parent communication yet. This is the first one. And that's even in 2 segments. We're doing the one for the groups that will come to the Holiday Inns, and then we're going to do one in the Market Square for the parents that are not going to leave their stuff and come. Okay,
right in the face of what we just touched on is a post from Unsung Elvis, who says, Eric, I'm so happy that you're talking about this topic. Unsung Elvis, a man, says, I was raped by a maidservant, and ever since I have always taken revenge on all my girlfriends. I get them to love me, and then I jill them. I love my present girl, but I fear it's going to be the same. That's a very interesting point. Felix says he's sharing an anecdote with us about a parent having advised, their daughter that she should never allow a man to place his hand around her genital areas. And 5 months later, she's pregnant. The mom asks her, says, well, I allowed his stick. Emmanuel Jerry Jesse says, I'm happy you're teaching this today, and my sister has been advised, and I wish you bring your workshop to Takrady and all of Africa to advise more. Black Rooney asks about the age, once again, the best age to start teaching a child in terms of sex education. And Sari Duchampi asks a very good question. Do you have a page on Facebook, for example?
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Yes, I want to learn more.
Not yet.
Do you have a page on Facebook?
Our website is going live tomorrow so that the children can still communicate. We offer counseling service. We even help teenagers that get themselves pregnant, so that sometimes, it's happened, the best way to deal with it, and also counsel the parent. Sometimes there are parents who come to us and say, I don't know where to start. How do I do this? So the workshop is supposed to assist them. We have a detailed information that we're going to give, like a handbook for them to follow on. And, anytime you get to a point you think you're lost, you can just refer and go through it, so that whenever you're having the communication, you are in control.
Please put it online. Please speak to the telco foundations. Ask them to put it, as a text message that people can access.
Getting them to even sponsor is a challenge.
Is that true?
Getting sponsorship for this project has been a challenge. And we say a big thank you to Yaz, because they've been very supportive, and to Cowbell from Asidor, and also to Holiday Inn, because they're giving us seats for 100 parents on Saturday. They're taking care of everything, and that is amazing. For them to even agree to do this, it just shows how much the topic is important to them.
Well, heavy topic, heavy posts.
Yes.
What can you expect? It's Sunrise. We're trying to shine some light on things that normally we try to keep in the dark. Sex education for young children, starting at the age of 5 or 6, right through adolescence. And from what Natalie Techia tells me, the Wish Foundation believes that elder siblings start this and continue this if you love the child or the children. And what does Wish Foundation stand for? It's such a nice thing, the Wish Foundation. What's that wish?
Okay, the W stands for wealth creation, because
wealth creation.
Yes,
okay, wealth.
We take the youth who are unemployed and we train them in a skill.
Okay, so that's W.
W.
Okay.
The I is for inspiration.
Inspiration.
Yes, and then we have the spiritual development, and then we do the health and the hope. So
health and hope.
Yes.
Okay, wealth, inspiration, spiritual development, health, and hope. H stands for two things.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Natalie Techia. If you want to get in touch with her, well, then just wait a little, because I've asked her to start a page on Facebook and share her details, email, phone numbers. I'll take all those for you. If you ask for them, I'll share them with you. Keep watching Sunrise. Natalie, once again, thank you very much, and all the best in your future endeavors.